Thank you.
Te hei Māori ora, tua ke au ki te mihi ke au koutou, nani huri. I te ira mutu koutou ko tō rōpū ko tai mai I tēnei ata, nori ira tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. He pai noa ki rungi te kau o ngai tau ki te mihi ki a rātau kuru peke atu ki te utarai. Nori ira koutou aho koko whiturangi tia, tēnei te mea atu. Hari atu koutou ki rungi tō mātou aroha. Ira koutou. Mohi ana koutou ka hore au e kai kauni hera. Ka noho au ki rungi te maru o te tai whenua o tamate. Nori ira, ka noho au ki te kōrero, ki te iwi whānui ki ngā kai kauni hera. Ia hui. Hegari koutou, ka nui te whakamiharo ki a tai koutou ki tēnei taumata. Mohi ana hau he rō te rōti, ko tai mai, he mahi ua I wainga nui o mātou iwi, ki te whawhai I te kraune, ko tai mai koutou I tēnei wā, nori tēnā koutou. Te rā pō he te hiunga kai kauni hera, ko niki te mea nui ki rungi tēnei kaupapa. Engari mā koutou whakamārama ki a rātau te whakaaro papai. Ahoko e pōtoke tēnei mehi. He mehi nui ki a koutou. No reira, e te ira mutu, tai no ki a Peter, ki a koe hoki Liz. Tēnā koutou, kia ora no tātou. Kia ora tātou. Te ko pāpā tēnā koe. Tēnā koe me te pai o te pai o te whatu manawa kua tīmata ria nei e tātou I roto I te tikanga Māori tēnā koe. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to be greeted in Māori. Nō reira, kei te mihi atu au ki a tātou. Anei he Toa Takitini e tai mai nei ki runga I te aroaro o te puari. Nō reira, tēnā kōtou. Kua whakawātea hia nei e kōtou te tahi wāhanga mā mātou. Tautoko atu au I wō kōrero e te pāpā kia rātau. Rātau kei nā marae e tiraha ana, engari rātau o tērā rua rautau, nā rātau te āhuatanga e tuku mai rā ki nā mea pērā I a tātou o tēnei rā e tonu nei I runga I te matua te whenua, te whakatutuki I nā kaupapara. Nā kaupapa haria mai rā e mātou ki runga I te aroaro I tēnei wā, nō reira tēnā koe whakawhānui atu te āhuatanga ki a tātou, tēnā koutou, kia ora rā tātou. Members of the Council, Mr. Chairman, we're pleased to be here. He Toa Takitini is very pleased to be here today. We thank you for making this bit of time. We think that we're a new group in the environment, and for those of you who understood my uncle very well in his opening, we're very happy to fulfil the role, and I'm hoping to do that today, that you put before us around taking our rightful part, if you like, in the environment of Hawke's Bay. So with that, concluding the formalities, I'm going to sit because I've been watching your television out the front and I see that business is done from the chair.
Well, welcome, and it's good to have you here, David. So perhaps we don't need any introductions over here, but perhaps for formalities, perhaps you could introduce yourself and your team. Peter's part of the furniture around here, but that's okay.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Liz Munro. I'm born and raised initially in Waipawa, but I'm a lawyer by profession, have spent 20 years working in the treaty industry, and I did a good stint in the Office of Treaty Settlements with Dr. Cullen in his last 18 months at the helm. So I've come from that background and am now the lead negotiator for Here Taunga Tamatea. Kia ora tātou, and it's lovely to be here. Great.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. I'm Peter Paku from the Rahapia Marae. Every so often I drop into regional for the environment, and I'm the junior negotiator. Kia ora.
Actually, he's the first chairman.
We were considering building him an office here, but
So David Tipene-Leach is my name. I'm the third chairman. Peter was our first chairman. Roger Marker was our second chairman. And I'm here for the finishing straight of this organisation, so to speak. I'm a general practitioner. I work for the Tai Whenua in Hastings. I'm a local chap from Porangahau, from Central Hawke's Bay. And then, yeah, kia ora tātou. Shall I jump into it? So people, we're here today to talk about Here Taunga Tamatea, the Rohe. We're here to talk about He Toa Takitini, the Ropu, the group who are chasing the treaty settlement that's based on the area that we'll talk about. And as I say, we're very pleased to be here. I think that the first thing to say is that we are going to be the biggest single cash injection into the regional economy in Hawke's Bay for the next decade. I've got no doubt about that. And that hasn't happened at the moment, but that's due to happen in a very short period of time. And what we need to do, and the reason why we're here, is that we need to begin a conversation about how the Māori community of Hawke's Bay, in particular our region of Hastings and Central Hawke's Bay, begins a conversation of partnership. A conversation of partnership that we believe is very much due for a bit of growing and very much due for a bit of nurturing. So who are we? Well, you know, first of all, we are Ngāti Kahungunu. We're a part of this Ngāti Kahungunu group that runs in the red section that you can see on the map from Wairoa right down to Wellington. Ngāti Kahungunu you might associate with Nikki. That's Ngāti Kahungunu Iwi Incorporated, who I'm sure you'll know well and have had lots of exchange with. We are not that group. We are of Ngāti Kahungunu origin, our tribe. But if you look at the second of the maps, you can see that there are a number of what are called LNGs, or large natural groupings, which have been formed for treaty negotiations within our wider iwi group. So there's Here Taunga Tamatea. We're right bang in the middle there. You can see that we're reasonably sizable. That one that's labelled Rangitane at the bottom, that's the Rangitane area of interest. It's also the Wairarapa area of interest. The Wairarapa area of interest is slightly smaller than that, but nevertheless, Wairarapa is our biggest area, and we are the second biggest area in this tribal grouping. So you can see it's a big group, it's an influential group. Ngāti Kahungunu is, I mean, we're certainly the second biggest land area for treaty settlements, with the biggest, of course, being Ngaitahu, the whole of the South Island. And we're the third largest iwi in terms of population. That's Ngāti Kahungunu Whānui, the wider group, after Ngāpuhi and after Ngāti Porou. Here Taunga Tamatea, well, our area is, and you'll probably know this, but we're about 1.475 million acres of land. The distinguishing figure in this is that only 2.5% of that remains in Māori hands, and most of that is leased out and not farmed. So one of the markers of our claim is that this land was so good that almost all of it was alienated into the hands of the Crown and into the hands of colonists at the time, and is, of course, the basis of our claim. The other large and important part of our claim, and a large and important part of our history, are the waterways of Here Taunga and Tamatea. There are 5 major rivers, there are major lakes, and there are major wetlands and swamps that you'll all be aware of. And of course, the other thing that you'll probably all know is that we weren't in those times farmers, we were people who lived off the land, and so those waterways are an important part of our history and an important part of our heritage. And so they have become an important part of our claim. So this is about land and waterways. The last part of us is about lost opportunity, The lost opportunity to have developed in the late 1800s as businesses that were certainly well developed by the 1860s. Māori business in this country, in this area, was huge, and of course there was a depression in the 1860s, and there was a collapse of the wheat market, and Māori businesses fell to pieces at the same time that the Land Court was formed, and the rapacious appetite of the colonial state at that time for our lands was rather devastating. So given our land and water-based parts to our claim, the other huge interest that we have, of course, is in the two major aquifers. These are a part of our treaty claim that we're working on at the moment, the Here Taunga and the Rotaniwha aquifers. So that was us talking about who are we, and here we go. Here's our key milestones. So we've been in this business, so to speak, since 2003, when Peter was spent a lot of time, and you'll see that it was a lot of time, pulling our communities together. And this is a big community. These are 23 marae groups. These cover 2 district councils. This is a large area of land. This is a big population that we have estimated at between 35 to 40,000 people. Of course, we have a large diaspora living in the cities and overseas, but probably 10,000 people who are living here in this area. In 2011, we had the mandate recognised, and the mandate is about saying, yes, here Toa Takitini is the group that the Crown will recognise for the purpose of negotiations. Very shortly after the terms of negotiations were signed, and our agreement in principle was signed in June this year. The agreement in principle being that document that stipulates these are the major pieces of redress that you can expect, and that we, the Crown, will not go back on. We're looking forward to a deed of settlement a year after the AIP, June next year. At the moment, doesn't seem to be too much in the way. Here Toa Takitini is buzzing along as an organisation. We have just finished a large round of information where we believe that we've now got the people, 99 to 100% on board. There is no dissent in our ranks. And so we don't see any trouble with the deed of legislation, the deed of settlement, or indeed the legislation that should follow a year later. So in June 2016, the legislation allows the redress to come down to the body of the PSGE. So just to talk a little bit about that, the last part there is that we are, however, before the deed of legislation, to receive an on-account payment. Now our settlement was, this is a reasonable amount of money. Our settlement is of 120 million is made up of $100 million that is straight cash. The last $20 million is made up of the Kawekas and the Guavas Crown Forests, of which we will own with our ahuriri or Napier-based LNG. So the us and they, 2/3 for us, 1/3 for them, and kind of based on the idea that there is a Here Taunga and Tamatea inside our 2 separate political entities working as one inside our LNG. So that's worth around $9 or $10 million, and of course the interest that accrues over that period of time is about 6 or 7 million. We have obtained certain rights in relation to rivers, sites of significance across the area. We have developed relationship agreements with various reasonably important government ministries and other Crown agencies, and of course we have this piece of redress that's called the Regional Planning Committee, whereby, and you'll all know about that, that Planning Committee, the legislation has been through the House, and it's the committee will be sitting, I think, in late January. But that's tootling along very well. I need to say that we thought that the Regional Planning Committee was a little bit weak. We were looking for something a little bit stronger, with a little bit more impetus, However, that being said, we signed off on it. It was the best thing that was going at the time, and we're keen, very, very keen, I might add, to be taking part in that process. In terms of how big this is, well, you know, it's going to be the 5th biggest settlement in the country. The big ones that we all know about, Ngai Tahu and Waikato, have gone on. One of them's worth 1.1 billion and the other's worth 800 million now. So they've done reasonably well. Tūhoe is up there at 170 million. Ngāpuhi is likely to be large and possibly bigger than Ngai Tahu. This is a huge iwi up there, and yes, they're having some troubles at the moment, but they will settle for a large amount of money. So we're coming in just ahead, if you like, of Ngāti Porou. So we're seated here to be the 5th largest, the 4th or 5th largest settlement in the country. But if you stop and have a think about Ngāti Kahungunu as a group, and there are the figures. Wairoa, they got $100 million. Tāngoio Maunga Haruru, that's up around Tāngoio, Marae and up to Lake Tūsira. There's them at 23. Pāhauwera is further up around the Raupunga area, and they're another separate, large, powerful hapu nui or iwi of their own. They settled for $20 million plus a lot of cultural redress packages. Our Napier cousins got another $20 million, and we think that Wairarapa is going to be worth between 80 to 90 million. So, I mean, this puts us in the realm of being a $370 million iwi, if indeed these groups ended up working together. So, you know, I mean, we feel that we are a powerful newcomer to the environment. And I don't think that that's up for debate. The key planks to our settlement that we have negotiated. In the short term, we were talking about, these are the sorts of things that the people were talking about, that they wanted maraes that were no longer dependent on sausage sizzles and cake stalls to be able to pay the insurance. Maraes that you could happily bring anybody into and put them up for as much time as you wanted. Maraes who were indeed able to think about insuring themselves. But sustainable maraes that would be good for the future. We're talking about maraes that could develop businesses. We're talking about maraes who are going to be in a governance and financial accountability place whereby they might be able to receive substantial amounts of money and become investors in their own right. So we have talked as a key plank in our strategy that we've been selling to people is an invest in the people policy. We don't wish to become a tainui, which seems to be a large organisation that has a lot of money in the centre with not a lot going out to the people. We want to become a little bit more decentralised than that, with the marae being able to hold money. Education, certainly, well, there's no doubt that education is our big push because we want the people to be able to achieve in the socio-economic endeavours that they wish. And te reo Māori, we want people to be able to achieve in the cultural and spiritual ways that Māori people and Māori communities should be able to do. But it can't escape notice that river quality came up time and time and time, and still continues to come up time and time again. We sold to the government that we were interested in regional economic development, and that was one of our major pushes, that we didn't want to, invest in the ASB or any US offshore funds. And of course, like you, we will struggle between the questions of river quality and economic development, and indeed we want to play a role in that discussion. There are some key sites out there that you might be interested in. Cape Kidnappers will become our version of Mount Cook, of Aorangi Maunga, whereby it is given back to us, and we are likely to give it back the week later as a gift to the nation. I might add that there are some people who say, look, we shouldn't give it back at all, we should just start culling those gunnets and start a gannet industry, but nevertheless we won't go there today. So Cape Kidnappers, Pukeora Forest is another one of the major pieces of Crown land, and I mean this is one of the realities that Pukeora Forest, with its 40 hectares of forest and its 50 hectares below the forest, is one of the biggest pieces of, is the single biggest piece of Crown land that's available. Whatumā will come back, Lake Whatumā will come back, and that'll come back as a recreation reserve. We'll have a lot of co-management relationships on some of our conservation and scenic reserves, and at every time here there are name changes that are involved in treaty claims. Although they're processed in the normal way in treaty space, it seems to be a way to get these things done. The last part of our AIP was a facility to invest in the Ruataniwha Water Storage Scheme. So we were not slow. We noted that this was on the horizon. We went to the government and said, look, this is the perfect opportunity for us to become an investor in our local economy. They did provide that facility, not quite in the way that we were hoping, but they did provide that facility, and they provided it as an on-account possibility, meaning that we could pull down this money for investment before the legislation came down. However, and I must say that like you at your table, we had a few conflicts at our table around this. There are some varying opinions inside the Māori community as there are inside the non-Māori community, but nevertheless we have this facility. At the moment it will sit there. We don't have to make a decision, thank goodness. We're going to wait for you to make a decision first. We don't have to go there at the moment, but the other projects that we're going to get on with, we'll draw down $5 million early next year to get on with some of the other projects around the building up the sustainability of our maraes. Our current priorities and the project that we're working on at the moment is establishing the PSGE. The post-settlement governance entity needs to be in place. That post-settlement governance entity needs to be in place, number one, to receive the on-account payment and get those smaller projects underway, but this is the large body that gets up and receives the 120 in 2 years' time. So we're on track for that. We move early next year into a ratification process and a vote, a postal vote on whether we should go there or not. We are reasonably confident that we're going to get in there very easily. And then He Toa Takitini continues. So the PSGE is up as a new entity. He Toa Takitini continues, and that's us, we're not the PSGE, to complete the negotiations. And part of those negotiations, of course, are coming back to you. There are various things in the environment that are controlled by the regional council that we're interested in, around agreements around environmental things and management and partnership that we need to go. And of course what we're all interested in is we're all interested here in being prepared for what comes after settlement. What comes after settlement for us in relation to Hawke's Bay Regional Council is all the questions that are involved in the environment, all the questions that are involved in partnership, all the questions that are involved in how do we maximise the effectiveness of the tools that we have been able to negotiate with the Crown. So here we go, this is what we're all about. We're about collaboration with the councils. Yes, we're about clean rivers, and there are a number of you who are about clean rivers. I don't think there's anybody here who's not about clean rivers. We are indeed about economic development, not just for us. We want to be a major player, but our interest is in Hawke's Bay. We are not inward looking, we are outward looking, and our interest is in Hawke's Bay as a wider community. And the joint management agreements that we can get together to develop some of the environmental stuff and the habitat restoration are the sorts of places that we want to go. Lastly, I just want to finish off by saying there are three parts to the treaty. Part 1 was the part that says, okay, we agree to come into the government, and that's why we're here today, because we agreed under Part 1. Part 2, the Article 2, which is that one that you will, even if you don't know anything about the treaty, that's the one that says we'll retain ownership of all your lands, all your rivers, all your homes, and all those things that you deem to be precious, which very clearly we don't have. So this is what the treaty negotiation is about. The treaty negotiation was about, well, that was a lie and that was a trick and it didn't work and now we need to start again. So that's Article 2. And Article 2 is being done across the country. And that's what He Toa Takitini is about. But Article 3 is really important because Article 3 is the one that says, well, you are Kiwis, you are New Zealanders, you have the right, just like anybody else, to the privileges in those days of British citizens. But the difference between Article 2 and Article 3 is really important. So you would not have seen anywhere in this presentation about us aiming to invest in health, invest in housing, invest in social welfare, invest in those sorts of things. These are Article 3 objectives. The treaty does not let either the government off the hook for their obligations to New Zealand citizens or indeed councils or regional councils. So that's Article 3, we are Article 2. And as an Article 2 body, we're looking toward engagement with yourselves and engagement with the wider Hawke's Bay community for the future of Hawke's Bay. Koe rā noa hona kōrero, tēnā koutou. Thank you very much.